The Loves of Theodore Roosevelt celebrates 5 extraordinary women. They're the women that surrounded Theodore Roosevelt and made him into the hero of the American century that we all know and love today. Mittie Roosevelt is known in history as a Victorian waif, someone who really had no consequence on her son Theodore Roosevelt. That is not true. She had incredible turns of phrase. She was impetuous and lively. She was known by everyone for her legendary literary salons. She is really, when you think about it, the source of Theodore Roosevelt's personality. Mittie was the one who would read to Theodore Roosevelt from things like the McGuffey readers that had coy little phrases such as "speak softly and carry a big stick." Also, remember that Theodore Roosevelt was a very sickly young boy. He lived a life of the mind. He would read and do taxidermy, and it was his mother who would soothe every cough, every fever. It was his father who famously said, "Theodore, you have the mind, but not the body." But it was really Mittie Roosevelt, his mother, who made sure that he lived to become the Rushmore Roosevelt that we all know and love today. Alice Hathaway Lee was a catch. She was beautiful and beguiling, one of the most sought after in all of Boston, and Theodore Roosevelt fell head over heels in love. He madly pursued Alice for 2 years. He spent the equivalent of hundreds of thousands of dollars on jewelry and trinkets. He would travel the 6 miles to her home, sometimes on horseback and sometimes by foot. Here he was being surrounded by lively conversation, discussions of theology and poetry and politics, and not just any kind of politics, reform-minded politics, progressive politics. These were Boston Brahmins, the Lees, that believed in equality with women and equality amongst the races. And this kind of progressive reform that Theodore Roosevelt later became known for really has its origin in Alice Hathaway Lee. Bamie Roosevelt is Theodore Roosevelt's elder sister, and she is like a substitute mother to TR. We don't know much about her, and she's not celebrated in history, but she deserves to be because she was one of the biggest influences on Theodore Roosevelt in his entire political and personal life. She was like RFK to JFK. She was the person to whom TR turned for advice and counsel. In every single major decision that Theodore Roosevelt made, whether it was going to war in the Spanish-American War, whether it was running for governor, or all the decisions that he made as President of the United States, TR constantly turned to his elder sister Bamie for her advice and counsel. Alice Roosevelt Longworth said of Bamie Roosevelt that had she been a man, she, not Theodore Roosevelt, would have been President of the United States. And none other than Eleanor Roosevelt agreed with that assessment. Connie Roosevelt is Theodore Roosevelt's younger sister. If Bamie is the one to whom TR leans for advice, then Connie is the sympathetic ear. She's the one who's more poetic and creative. Eleanor Roosevelt said that she's the one to whom you went when you had a problem and you just wanted to be heard. It was Connie who fed stories of TR's heroics to Richard Harding Davis, and Connie who would feed stories of the family life of Theodore Roosevelt to the press. Connie knew that the more the public heard about the rambunctious home life, the family life, and the incredible closeness of the Roosevelts, the more endeared they would become to the nation. And indeed, she was right. She was Theodore Roosevelt's press secretary long before that role ever existed. Edith Kermit Roosevelt is the first modern First Lady. Edith woke up every morning and read 4 to 5 newspapers and would take notes and make clippings of those newspapers and feed them to her husband. She sat in on key cabinet meetings, sewing in the corner as to not draw attention, and afterward would discuss with Theodore his political and personal options. They would take long walks and talk about the strategy and politics of the day. Edith was the one to whom TR really looked to for judgment. She was a shrewd, analytical personality who knew who had TR's best interest politically and who was trying to take advantage of him. It was almost always Bammy, Connie, Mitty, or Edith who had something important to tell Theodore Roosevelt. When he listened, he succeeded. When he didn't listen, he failed.